these are some of the most.
Sorry, go ahead, Ben.
These are some of the problems that we have in this area when we talk about mountain problems: the odor, the water, the air quality, the sewage problems. I mean, we go on and on and on. And when we look at it and look at the facts of everything, it actually shows up to me as an environmental racism problem, as well as discrimination and injustice in this area. We have problems that can be monitored. We have problems that can be resolved if someone had the intent or the intentions to actually step forward to do the right things in the right direction, rather than trying to take advantage of the area based on its condition. The air monitors themselves have been very helpful. We are new to this, working along with you, Yan, and Dr. Wilson. We're glad that you all were there to help us develop some type of data to actually have to support some of our complaints. With all the different things that have came to Uniontown, for instance, the coal ash, which created a horrible odor. It created possible, health issues of all kinds. I heard someone say earlier that there are many different problems that the community is having, trying to actually determine where those problems come from. We had no data to help us with that. So now with the monitors in place, it gives us an opportunity to actually have something to support our complaints. And this is great. Our problem with the units are having the appropriate place to install them. Our people that are in the area where there is most of the problems, they don't have the necessary services to actually give us a comfortable data report. For instance, we don't have Wi-Fi. The only unit that we have connected to Wi-Fi that I know of at this moment is the one at City Hall. And I noticed the other day that we have problem with Wi-Fi going in and out at City Hall, whereas that installing them somewhere where they could be safe, out of harm's way. The weather has an effect on it. If I'm not mistaken, when you were down last year, I think you had to take about 9 of those monitors back with you for repairs. Hopefully, we can get the people to become a part of this system, which it doesn't stop at the monitors. It includes the people as well. So we're just trying to deal with the hope that it brings by having these monitors in place.
Thank you, Ben. I'll go over to Kim.
Yes, environmental racism and classism, as I say, is directly linked to income and race. And in particular, in the South Ward, the Dayton Street neighborhood, which is a community, as I stated, that is closest to our port and our airport and the Freeland-Heisen Avenue corridor, where hundreds of trucks travel down this road on a daily basis. This community is the highest concentration of public housing. So we have, within a 12-block radius, we have the Newark Housing Authority has about 9 high-rise buildings where senior citizens reside. And then they have the townhouses for Newark Housing Authority where low-income residents reside. Not even a mile away from this location is a Superfund site. Not even a mile away is the airport, is the port. right? Not even a mile away is all of the industry that they are impacted by the cumulative impacts of pollution. And so clearly we see that the environmental degradation is connected to the color of our skin, the zip code we live in, and the resources. Now, the Port of New York and New Jersey is the economic engine of the region, but it is the death zone for us who live in the South Ward, and particularly that Dayton Street community. And we are not, our residents are not against economic development and improvements, but what we don't want it at the expense of our health. We want to make sure that we can have access to good jobs and a healthy environment. It is not an either or scenario. You know, when we didn't know better, then that was what we saw occurring in our communities, that they want to give us, you know, the pollution or, you know, not, you know, and or no jobs. And we're saying, no, we can't operate like that. And so that is the problem that we experience in this community and in my neighborhood in particular, that individuals don't understand that the health of the community is directly linked to this environmental degradation, which was caused by environmental racism. My mother used to always say what's happening on the other side of the railroads, right? And where you see that is where low income BIPOC communities are particularly located. And so that, you know, that's what we feel in our community. And we are definitely fighting each and every day to change that so that we can have a better environment in the community for the next generations of residents to live in.
Thanks, Kim. I'll go Omar and then Dawud and then Karen.
All right, so for, at least from my perspective, I think that the two prior comments definitely relate to some of the issues and concerns that we're seeing. I think that a lot of the concerns in our communities when it comes to disproportionate impact come from just poor land use decisions, right? Specifically around zoning. Why are these facilities cited in Black and brown communities, low wealth communities? It's because the political pressure is not on them not to do so, right? For example, in the city of North Charleston, the reason why the port was moved to the city of Charleston is that that port was originally approved to be built in an affluent community across the river. And those folks that bought property there to build homes signed an agreement saying that they acknowledged that the port was going to be built there, right? But when these folks built their homes, they had political access, they were able to get the state legislature to move that facility from the affluent part of Daniel Island to the city of city of North Charleston, where our communities had did not have the political access and did not have the kind of political pressure that was necessary to stop that facility from being cited in our communities, right? So land use decisions, right? That contributes to this. And the second, and that's the environmental racism piece, right? When we start talking about classism, right? We talk about those who are in the position to make decisions, right? That lack the understanding of the lived experiences of people who are exposed to this stuff every day. They make decisions based on their experience, their lived situation through the lens in which they see the world in the city, and whatever decisions that they're making happens, right? So that's the classism piece, where people who are in these decision-making roles and responsibilities lack the understanding of environmental justice and the impacts that the decisions that they're making have on other people quality of life. So we've got the environmental structural racism that happens within the institutions that allow these facilities to operate, and then the decision makers who are there to enforce rules, who are there to enforce policies, lack the necessary understanding to see the challenges and the disproportionate impact that other communities are facing every day.
Thanks, Omar. Go ahead, Dawud.
Well, I think the points that were just made over the last 7-8 minutes are quite clear and quite true. I mean, let's not forget that even federal organizations and administrations like the Federal Housing Authority or Federal Housing Administration, excuse me, directed families, regardless of their level of income, to areas that were near or on Superfund sites to live, to areas near industrial sites or near the ports. So this is an ongoing practice that is clearly systemic in nature and has been part of this nation since its beginning. And of course, we know that banks are still redlining Black and brown families when it comes to home loans and where they end up living. So, you know, I agree with Sister Kim, Brother Omar, and Brother Benjamin that, you know, this, it's clear, systemic, it's systemic racism, and therefore now environmental racism, and it's something that it has to be addressed and addressed now.
Thank you. And then wrapping it up with you, Karen, and kind of the positioning of industry around Cheverly and different parts there.
Yes. Yeah. So Cheverly is in this Prince George's County, which is a fairly affluent majority African-American county in the state of Maryland. And I'm realizing that Cheverly itself, we do have a lot of our political representatives who live in Cheverly. And so it's become apparent to me today that we have a level of wealth, let's call it, in Cheverly that has enabled us to actually implement this network that we have. You know, our community has people with the adequate Wi-Fi and electrical access. So that difference is really significant. I mean, as difficult as it was for us to implement our network of 21 units over the last year, is not as difficult as it would be in some of these other areas. So that's an impressive point. The county itself, we're dealing with our county representatives, and to some respect, trying to address the policy issues that allow. There was an effort to do a rezoning, and for the most part, there was no changes made to the zoning the way that it's been proposed. They just sort of simplified the categories, but we still have all this heavy industry planned as well as existing. So the concentration of the industries, now we don't have a port to deal with, but certainly the traffic is a huge concern, not only for its pollution, but it's the neighborhood on the south side, which is on the other side of the railroad tracks, has a lot of difficulty getting in and out because of that additional traffic. So I think that the main point is that there has to be this willingness, from the leaders and the policymakers to address the problems that the community is experiencing, and that's that's an uphill battle.
Thank you all. Ben, I think, is having some technological issues, but it really just goes to, it speaks to exactly what we're talking about with this digital divide. You have a digital divide in rural communities just based on where broadband cable is laid across the country, but also doubly so in Black rural communities like the ones that Ben is calling in from. So I'm really glad that we've been able to touch on that. Before we get into some audience Q&A, I've got one last question for the panel, and then we'll do maybe 1 to 2 minute responses here so that we can get to the Q&A by 12:20 before we get out of here at 12:30. So I'd like for you all to speak on the importance of networking and kind of your sort of like sister communities here working with us at CEEJH to do these air quality monitoring projects. And so even knowing that there's a national or a global epidemic of these toxics and this environmental racism and being dumped on consistently, it's really easy to feel isolated, and like you don't have a rope to hold on to. So how does connecting with community leaders in other communities across the country or in different parts of your region, how does that help you move the fight forward when we're talking about addressing these air pollution issues? And Dawud, I'd love for you to start and talk about Savannah's work with the Moving Forward Network and your partners in Tallahassee and in this room.
Right, and thank you for that. Yeah, the sharing of information is key for us. Looking at the work that Brother Omar and his organizations have done in South Carolina, and then being able to work with our EJ partners who are part of the Moving Forward Network here in the Southeast is an opportunity to share research, share findings, and even look at in the case of when we look toward South Carolina or even or Newark, New Jersey as well, we can see the work that they've already done, the steps that they needed to take, and that informs us of what we need to do and the research we need to move forward. The other aspect of this is that each EJ community has their own particular issues to deal with, but there are a number of similar issues that we all are dealing with, and it goes back to institutional and environmental racism. So the sharing of information on our part, once we get our network up and running, we hope to first inform others to join the group of EJ communities that are already sharing that information. And then that might inspire other communities that may not be thinking about this to go ahead and proceed with their own hyperlocal monitoring network. They can look to Savannah and the west side of the city and say, okay, they did it, given all the issues that they're facing. If they can do it, we can do it as well. And, I'd like to really end, I don't want to take up too much time, but I'd like to end with saying that, the Harambee House, we follow the principles of Kwanzaa year round. And particular type of principle that this connects to is the third principle of Ujima, collective work and responsibility. All right, so we build and maintain our community, and we look around, we see our neighbors, we see our fellow brothers and sisters of all hues, and say, their problem is our problem, and we can solve our problems together.
Thanks, Dawud. We'll go over to Kim next.
Yes, and I definitely agree with what Brother Dawud stated, and one of the principles of Kwanzaa is self-determination, right? And in all our neighborhoods, we have to have the self-determination to change the situations that are not healthy. right? And then we have to support one another to make those changes. And so networking is so crucial and important. Just by listening to what Omar and Karen stated here today, and I took down some notes about the solar, because we too are experiencing a lot of the issues with the plugins. And so we had to hire an electrician to make sure that, you know, they can evaluate, because the business are saying, well, we want to make sure this guy is, you know, have the credentials. We don't want anything to happen to our, you know, business. And so it's quite interesting to kind of hear what is happening across. And if we wouldn't have the ability to network or be involved or part of a larger EJ movement, and like MFN with Dawud, Southwest Environmental Alliance, you know, I'm the regional rep for New York and New Jersey for the Moving Forward Network. So that's very, very helpful. And particularly with COVID, you know, and not having the ability to go out and you know, meet with other folks. Sometimes these Zooms with our other colleagues across the country and across the states is very helpful to us, because we need that. And so definitely, you know, there's a wealth of knowledge just on this panel. And without networking, we would not be successful. And so if I can have somebody help me so I don't have to fall into a situation or experience a pitfall, because we have individuals who have those experiences, that is something that our community needs. And so I just love it and appreciate it. And I'm thankful to be a part of this new network now with you all at the University of Maryland with Dr. Kobe Wilson. That's important to us.
Thanks, Kim. So we've got 2 minutes before 12:20. So this is going to be kind of a lightning round for Ben, Omar, and Karen to just say the importance of connecting across communities on these air pollution issues. So I'll start with you, Ben.
Okay. I think, well, first of all, I am a strong believer in collaborating with different people from the outside. This helps strengthen what we are trying to do by gathering information on what other people are doing. You can't really beat that idea. And the way I see it right now, we are progressing with things that we are learned from other organizations. That, for instance, one of the main things I can put together right now is one of our worst environmental difficulties here is the landfill. And the landfill is where they have housed 4 million tons of coal ash. Well, I have been in, the group has been in communication with the people, the organization where the coal ash come from, and that was Kingston, Tennessee. So what they have going on is they are developing information that can be helpful to us down here. So I am a strong believer of collaborating and working along with other people for knowledge, if nothing else.
Thanks, Ben. Omar?
Yep, 30 seconds. Co-learning opportunities, sharing resources, and leveraging best practices and knowledge. That's what networking and collaboration do.
Thank you. Karen?
Yeah, so I've been able to collaborate with a group called the Earth Science Information Partners, a group I worked with before I retired. And their focus is on making data matter. They're very interested in citizen science, community resilience, and climate change. So I think the potential for leveraging some high-tech resources to help solve some common problems is there. And we've been able to become a sister city with Los Angeles, which has a very interesting air quality monitoring project that they have started up. So collaboration, I think, is an essential way to move forward.
Thank you. Okay, so Priya has been collecting audience questions and just gave me a list here. So in no particular order, we'll try and get to as many of these as we can. First question is, how have you recruited community members to install the monitors? What kind of pushback or hesitancy have you faced? And how did you overcome it? So I'm actually going to target this question to Ben and Karen, because I know all of you have stories, but I think you might have some particularly interesting stories to share, Ben, when you're talking about pushback and why people might not want these monitors. So go ahead, Ben.
Well, I think it's first of all, you have to provide to the people the importance of developing this data. This is helpful to them. You have to encourage them to believe in it and continue to push forward to make things better for the community. Our biggest pushback was from the officials of the city. And this was the difference between where we wanted to go and where they wanted to stay. So therefore, we sort of got out, tried to educate the community of the importance of having these monitors installed in the area. It gives you the ability to develop a base of where you are in order to know where you need to go, have an idea of where you're going. So I think we doing a pretty good job with getting the people to believe in what we're doing.
Thanks, Ben. Karen, go ahead.
Yes, it was mentioned before about the liability concerns that agencies have. So I reached out to our schools, a public school and a private school, and they both kind of said, well, I'm going to ask, the high ups, and never heard back from them. Of course, I also imagine that COVID is a complicating factor for them as well. So that's one dead end so far. But we were able to get a number of, 21 places established, and a lot of that was showing that it was easy. And I installed one at my home so that I could check out, what the potential obstacles were, and was able to convince people that the load, the bandwidth and electricity was not going to show up on their bills, that they wouldn't notice it at all. And then the other issue then is people having, the adequate resources then to do it.
Thanks, Karen. Kim, another question that's come up in the chat is this idea that Dr. Wilson mentioned in the keynote about collecting data in a non-extractive way. Can you speak to how this project is for your community is or is not being extractive? And I'd like to hear also about I'd like for you to share with the audience about the youth training piece that you've added to your program.
Yeah, it's very important for us to ensure that we are intentional about keeping our youth informed and engaged. And so we created the Gala Green Alliance Leadership Academy, where we are training our youth around the importance of air monitoring, environmental injustices that they see in their community, and the changes that they can make, right? And then how it is also connected to their health. So our leadership training program is very important so they can understand how to use CEEJH screens, and also know how to communicate to the residents. Oftentimes the parents need to be instructed by their children. And so if we are empowering and engaging our youth, then we are ensuring that not only are they not only do they have a seat at the table, but then they're also empowering their parents, which then is empowering the community. And it is important for us, this information, because oftentimes we don't have access to the information. Like, it's intentionally kept away from us. And, residents believe that sometimes data could be manipulated. So they oftentimes say, what are we doing and how are we controlling this narrative of the information? Because when there's community meetings with DEP or city leadership, there's a lack of I guess transparency. And so individuals want to know that, let me have an input on how this information and this data is being collected. Let me understand this process so that we can be ensured that at the end of the day, it is going to help us and is not going to be a narrative that is not truthful, right? Because for years, our community has felt like we're just not getting the truth. And so we are continuing to see the same problems in our community because people aren't doing what they should be doing. And so that's what I would say, and why this is so important to us is making sure that the transparency is there. Residents have a role in the narrative. Youth are definitely engaged because they are the future leaders, and that the data, again, is hyper local to their situation and not this big picture that they throw out in the news and just say everything is great in Newark because, you know, we're in compliance. And then we have children dying from asthmatic attacks in schools in 2021. It's just not acceptable.
Thank you, Kim. And this last question I want to try and get, we might go a little bit over, but I think this is a really critical and important question, maybe why a lot of attendees are watching the session. So what's happened? For those of you that have already started collecting the data, what has been the results? What have regulators gotten involved? Have you been able to provide the data to someone who will listen? So from that point, I'll start off with Omar and then expand to the rest of the panel.
I can say, yes, we have been able to use the data that we have collected in our communities to impact local decisions. We have used the data in a zoning mapping analysis where we were able to demonstrate upzoning impacts on our communities. Upzoning is changing the zoning from like residential or business to heavy industrial or light industrial, right? Which heavy industrial and light industrial allows for those industry like warehouses and good movements types of facilities to be sited in communities. So we were able to demonstrate a higher occurrence of upzoning in the communities that we work in, moving those zonings from businesses to light industrial and heavy industrial, making a pathway for those types of noxious types of land uses to occur in our communities. So we were able to demonstrate that and use that data along with our air quality data to stop rezoning of properties to be warehouses. So we were able to do that. We were able to demonstrate a disproportionate impact of industrial operations in our communities. We were able to map the distribution of these facilities in our communities and be able to highlight that our area hosts a high number of these types of facilities in our neighborhoods. And then lastly, we were able to have our revisation plan that Lampsey was able to develop into the city's comprehensive plan, right? That's a major win for our community, because now when you're talking about your plan is part of the city's comprehensive plan, then when they're looking at future land use decisions, though that plan comes into consideration, right? We always have to push back on the city, right? Because sometimes people don't value the position of the community. So you always have to be diligent and aware of the issues and concerns that come up and be able to vocalize your issues and concerns in a way that benefits your community. So those are some of the wins for us when we collect the type of data in our communities.
Thanks, Omar. Dawud, how about Harambee House's work and work with the city of Savannah?
Right. Well, we are yet to be at the point where we are going to begin to analyze the data. We're still in the collecting stage, but we're real happy to have academic partners and the Office of Sustainability with the City of Savannah who are partnering with us to begin to look at how we can take this data and analyze it. My understanding is that as we collect our data with these low-cost monitors, there will be a statistical analysis that will be done with the data that will be collected at the same time with the federal census. And we have a professor at the Savannah State University, HBCU, that's a partner with us, that has said that the biostatistical department will be working with us on that. And the result really is that the Hudson Hill community wants to say, okay, we can now prove that there is a statistical difference between the air in and around Hudson Hill and neighboring communities and the rest of the city. Therefore, let's begin to look at public policy changes that need to be instituted to clean up the air or add more health services within the west side of the city. So we're still at the beginning part. I know I will be contacting all four of my partners here on this panel to get their insight, and certainly Brother Omar, because of the work that they've done. But it's clearly the point, as Kim was saying earlier on this panel, that the issue is always, well, what data do you have? Well, once we have this data and we analyze it, then we can put forward and say, here's our data, and this is what needs to change.
Thanks, Dawud. I won't call on anyone, but if anyone has something left quick to add, go ahead, Karen.
Yeah, quick point. As far as the purple air goes, there is a significant effort in the United States to build citizen science data from the purple air networks. And the EPA is doing a lot of work on getting that data and making it more accurate. A lot of universities are tackling that problem. The other thing is that I had mentioned, and I guess we'll be hearing from Tad Aburn, who is heading up the Maryland Department of Environment for Air Pollution. And I was just really very impressed that he took the initiative to use our network and institute this inspection program as a pilot this summer. And I don't know, what the results are of his effort yet. I expect to hear from it, but he did, as far as transparency goes, set up a website to show, where complaints were coming in and where they were doing these unscheduled inspections of potential pollution sources. So I think that this work definitely is making an inroad, and especially with the purple air networks becoming kind of a de facto standard for low-cost monitoring.
Thanks, Karen. Ben, I see you have unmuted your mic.
Well, at the moment, things run through your mind. Imagine with the pushback that we receive from our officials here in town, with sharing with them the monitor we installed a few months ago at the City Hall. They two of them that I know are impressed with what the monitors have to offer. So we can only hope to build from that point, getting them to understand as part of getting the citizens also to understand how important this effort and program is for the city. I hear a lot of good things from the rest of them around the country. This is good. This is good.
Thanks, Ben. Kim, any last comments from you? Well, thank you all. I gotta break out my applause. Well, I'll just give it from mine for the sake of time. Thank you all for participating in this panel. Thank you all for the attendees who joined in. I think the number went up to over 120 at a certain point. So thank you. This has been a great kickoff session. We are now in the lunch break. We're 6 minutes into the lunch break. So we'll start back up with sessions at 1 o'clock. The session for this room coming up at 1 o'clock will be, 1 second, bear with me. It's Too Darn Hot, Urban Heat Islands and Environmental Justice. So you can stay in the room if you'd like and just have the camera off and the microphone off. But thank you again to our panelists, and make sure you check out some of the other sessions. Check out Whova to see the rest of the agenda for the rest of the 3 days. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, Jan.
Thanks, Ben. Take care.
Sir, you too.